Welcome back to the deep dive. I often look at really successful people, doesn't matter if it's business or uh, politics, even sports, and they just seem to know what everyone else is going to do. Like they're always playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
That's a great way to put it. And, that ability, it isn't some kind of magic sixth sense. It's really a structured way of thinking.
Okay.
So today, we're giving you the toolkit for that kind of strategic thinking. We're going to do a deep dive into game theory,
Game theory. Okay.
which is basically the science of making smart decisions when you're in situations involving strategic interactions.
Okay. Let's unpack this. Strategic interaction. That's just
Yeah.
anytime what's best for me depends on what someone else does, right? And maybe what's best for them depends on me.
Exactly that. The absolute core idea is what we call the interdependence principle. Your best move, it depends on what you think they'll choose. And guess what? Their best move depends on what they think you'll choose. It's a loop, really.
Right. A feedback loop.
Precisely. So our mission today is to break down these fundamental strategic decisions. The goal is, so you can look at almost any situation work, politics, friendships, whatever spot the underlying structure, and hopefully make a better move. All right, so to get started, we need a process, a simple four-step process to bring some order to the potential chaos of strategic thinking.
Okay, I like structure. Where do we start when things feel complex?
Step one, you've got to consider all the possible outcomes, every single one. And we make this concrete using a tool, a kind of map called the payoff table.
Payoff table. Okay.
Yeah, if it's just you and one other person, think of it like a grid. Your choices are the rows, their choices are the columns. And inside each box where a row and column meet, that shows the outcome, the payoff, for that specific combination of choices.
Ah, okay. So you're taking something messy and turning it into like a spreadsheet of possibilities, makes it objective.
That's the idea. Makes it clear. Then step two, think about the what-ifs separately. Don't try to solve it all at once. You mentally isolate things based on each choice the other person might make.
So like, okay, if they do X, what should I do? Then separately, if they do Y, what should I do? Break it down column by column in that table.
Exactly. Which brings us neatly to step three. Play your best response. For each of those what-ifs, each column you're looking at, you figure out the one choice that gives you the best possible outcome, the highest payoff.
Right. Maximize my gain for that specific scenario.
Yes. And we use a really simple tool here, just a visual check mark. It's called the check mark method.
Okay, can you walk me through that quickly? The check mark thing.
Sure. Imagine it's you and, let's call them rival X. You both can choose action A or action B. Let's say the table shows. If rival X picks A, your payoff is 10 if you pick A, but 15 if you pick B.
So B is better for me if they choose A.
Right. So you put a little mental check mark next to that 15 for your choice B. Then you look at the next possibility. What if rival X chooses B? Maybe your payoff is 5 for choosing A and 8 for choosing B.
Okay, so B is still my best bet, even if they choose B. Check mark next to the 8.
Exactly. You mark your best response for every single one of their potential moves.
That feels very self-focused. Just find the biggest number for me in each column.
Almost. But that leads to the really crucial final step. Step four. You have to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Strategic thinking isn't just about you. It's about realizing they're doing the exact same thing.
Ah, okay. They have their own payoff table. They're doing their own check marks based on what I might do.
Precisely. You have to anticipate their rational thought process, their best responses, before you can truly lock in your own best move.
So the real trick to strategy, it's less about knowing my own best outcome in isolation and more about correctly figuring out what they're going to rationally do and then playing my best response to that.
You've got it. That's the heart of interdependence.
Oh.
Okay, now we have the basic framework, those 4 steps. Let's apply it to probably the most famous strategic puzzle out there, the prisoner's dilemma, or PD.
Ah, yes, the prisoner's dilemma. I've heard of this one.
It perfectly illustrates why it's often so hard to get people or companies or countries to cooperate, even when cooperating would actually be better for everyone involved.
Right. Let's use that business example you mentioned. 2 companies, maybe Coke and Pepsi, deciding whether to keep spending millions on ads or cut back. Cutting back is cooperate. Keeping the high spending is defect.
Perfect example. Cooperating, both cutting ad budgets, is clearly best overall, right? They both save a ton of money. Market shares probably stay similar.
Yeah, seems logical.
But let's apply our 4 steps. Think like company 1. What if company 2 cooperates and cuts its spending?
Okay, if they cut back. Well, if I keep spending defect, I could grab a huge chunk of market share, right? That looks like a big win for me.
Exactly. So if Company 2 cooperates, Company 1's best response is,
To defect.
yeah,
Maintain the spending.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, the other what if? What if Company 2 defects and keeps spending heavily?
Well, then I definitely can't cut my budget. If I cooperate while they defect, I'll get crushed. So I have to defect too, just to keep up.
Right. So look what happened. If they cooperate, your best move is defect. If they defect, your best move is still defect.
Wow. So no matter what the other company does, my rational choice is always to defect, to keep spending.
That's the dilemma. And since both companies reason the same way,
They both end up defecting. Both keep spending millions on ads, even though they'd both be better off if they could just agree to cut back.
and that outcome, where both defect, is what we call the Nash equilibrium.
Okay, Nash equilibrium. How does that connect back to the check marks?
Remember the checkmark method? The Nash equilibrium is the sell and the payoff table, where both players have placed their checkmark. It signifies an outcome where everyone is playing their best response, given what others are doing. And crucially, once you're there, nobody can improve their own situation by unilaterally changing their mind. If Company 1 suddenly decided to cooperate while Company 2 is defecting, Company 1 would lose out, right?
Right. They're kind of stuck there. But hang on, this feels weird. The Nash equilibrium, the defect outcome, it's stable because nobody wants to move alone. But the cooperate outcome is obviously better for both of them if they could somehow get there together.
And that is the tragedy, the failure of cooperation inherent in the prisoner's dilemma. The individually rational pursuit of self-interest leads everyone to an outcome that's collectively worse off. Why? Because the agreement to cooperate isn't credible. The temptation to cheat, to defect while the other cooperates, is just too strong in the short term.
Wow. Okay. That really clicks because you see this pattern everywhere. It's like the tragedy of the commons, right? Overfishing a lake or pollution.
Exactly. Or think about splitting a dinner bill evenly among friends.
Oh, yeah, I hate that.
Right. The cooperative move is to order reasonably, considering your own budget, but the defect move is tempting. Order the expensive lobster because you know you're only paying, say, 1/5 of the extra cost while you get the whole benefit.
And if everyone thinks that way,
Everyone orders lobster, the bill is astronomical, and everyone pays way more than they would have if they just ordered for themselves. Individual rationality tanks the collective outcome.
okay, so the prisoner's dilemma is about conflict, where self-interest messes things up. But what about times when we actually want the same thing? When cooperation is the goal, but we just can't seem to line things up?
Great question. That takes us away from conflict scenarios like the PD and into what we call coordination games. Here, everyone prefers the same outcome, but the challenge is synchronizing choices to actually achieve it.
Like phone tag.
Phone tag is the perfect everyday example. You missed a call from a colleague. You both want to connect. Success is you call back while they wait, or you wait while they call back.
Right. But if we both call at the same time, busy signal, failure. If we both wait, hoping the other calls, silence, failure again. So there are two good outcomes, two ways to succeed.
Exactly. And that means this game has multiple equilibria. Equilibrium 1, you call, colleague waits. Equilibrium 2, you wait, colleague calls. Both are stable outcomes if you land on them. The problem isn't conflicting interests. It's the purely logistical challenge of settling on which good equilibrium to aim for.
Okay, I can see that. Like choosing which video chat platform to use for a meeting, or even which side of the road to drive on. Everyone wants to coordinate.
Right. Or think about technology standards. Everyone might benefit if we all use the same type of charging cable, for instance. But getting everyone to switch at the same time, that's a massive coordination hurdle.
Okay, so that's coordinating to do the same thing. What else is there?
Well, sometimes the goal is to coordinate by doing different but complementary things. These are anti-coordination games. Think about choosing which route to take home during rush hour.
Ah, you want to pick the road less traveled. You want to actively avoid doing what everyone else is doing.
Precisely. You want to anti-coordinate. Your best outcome happens when you choose the route that others don't choose. Or maybe two companies considering entering a new niche market. It might only be profitable if one of them enters, not both. They want to avoid choosing the same action.
So, okay. If coordination games have multiple right answers that confuse us, and anti-coordination means we need to actively dodge each other, how do we solve these problems? How do we land on a good outcome?
Good question. We generally have three main ways to solve coordination failures. The first and simplest is communication. If you and your colleague can just text, "I'll call you back," boom, phone tag solved. Communication works well when interests are aligned.
Makes sense. But what if you can't easily communicate, like with thousands of drivers on the road?
Then we rely on solution number two, focal points, culture, and norms. These are shared expectations or cues outside the formal game. If we agree to meet for lunch but forget the time, we probably both just show up around noon, right? Because noon is the standard focal point for lunch in our culture.
Ah, like an unwritten rule. Or knowing which side of the sidewalk to walk on.
Exactly. Social norms solve countless tiny coordination problems every day. And if communication and norms aren't enough, that's where solution three comes in, laws and regulations. Think traffic laws. The government steps in and dictates drive on the right, enforcing one equilibrium for safety and efficiency.
Okay, communication, norms, laws. Seems like we have ways to handle coordination. But you mentioned these can still lead to bad outcomes.
Oh, absolutely. Even coordination games can trap us. Think about a bank run. Everyone individually wants the bank to be stable. That's the good equilibrium.
But if you believe that other people are starting to panic and withdraw their money,
Then my rational best response is to get my money out too, fast, before the bank collapses, even if I don't think the bank is actually failing yet. Exactly. Your action is driven purely by the expectation of what others will do. And if enough people share that fearful expectation, they all rush to withdraw, and that collective action causes the bank run, the bad equilibrium. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, even though everyone preferred the bank to survive. So far, we've mostly talked about games where players choose their actions, sort of, simultaneously, or without knowing the other's move for sure. But many interactions unfold over time. One person makes a move, then another responds, and so on. These are sequential games.
right, like in chess or negotiating a deal step by step. And the tool you mentioned for this is the game tree.
Yes, the game tree is perfect for visualizing sequential games. It's like a flowchart, mapping out every possible path of choices and responses from the start to all possible endings.
Okay. And how do you figure out the best strategy in a game like that? It seems way more complex than just a simple table.
It can seem that way, but there's a really powerful technique. It's perhaps the most fundamental lesson in all of strategy. Look forward and reason backward.
Look forward, reason backward. Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means you start your analysis at the very end of the game. You look at the final possible decision in the game tree. You figure out what the rational player, whose turn it is at that last stage, will choose to maximize their payoff.
So you solve the end of the game first.
Exactly. You determine their best response at the final step. Knowing that, you essentially prune away the branches leading to outcomes they wouldn't rationally choose. Then, you take one step back to the second to last decision. Knowing what will happen in the last step, you can now figure out the best move for the player at this stage.
Ah, I see. Because you know the consequence of each choice now.
Precisely. You keep rolling this logic backward, step by step, from the end all the way back to the very first decision of the game. By reasoning backward from the ultimate consequences, you determine the optimal move to make right now at the beginning.
That's really powerful, thinking about the end to decide the start. So in these sequential games, is it usually better to go first or second? Does one position have an inherent advantage?
Ah, that's the classic question. And the answer is, it depends. It really depends on whether commitment or flexibility is more valuable in that specific game.
Commitment versus flexibility.
Okay, sometimes there's a first mover advantage. This comes from being able to commit credibly to a certain strategy, often an aggressive one. Imagine a company entering a new market. By committing first to building a huge factory, they might signal they're serious about capturing a large market share, forcing potential rivals to maybe scale back their own plans or choose a different niche. They commit to taking the big half.
Okay, so moving first locks things down. But what about waiting?
That's where the second mover advantage comes in. This is all about the value of flexibility and information. If the market is uncertain or technology is changing rapidly, waiting to see what the first mover does allows the second mover to adapt, learn from the first mover's successes or mistakes, and potentially make a better informed, more precise decision.
So you choose based on whether it's better to plant your flag first or to wait and react with more knowledge.
Exactly. Commitment or flexibility, which one pays off more in this particular interaction? Okay, let's circle back to our old friend, the prisoner's dilemma. Remember how cooperation failed? Because the temptation to defect was too strong.
Yeah, the individually rational choice led to a bad outcome for everyone.
Right. But that was assuming a one-shot interaction. What happens if you play the game repeatedly? Say you're interacting with the same competitor or the same colleague week after week, year after year. These are repeated games.
Okay, that feels different. If I know I have to deal with this person again tomorrow, maybe I won't defect today because I'm worried about payback.
That's the intuition. The shadow of the future can indeed promote cooperation. But there's a catch related to backward induction.
Oh no, not backward induction again.
Afraid so. If the game is repeated a finite number of times, meaning you know exactly when the last interaction will be, cooperation still unravels.
Wait, really? Even if we played 100 times?
Even if you play 1,000,000 times, as long as the end date is known for sure. Think about it using backward induction. What happens in the absolute last round, the 1,000,000th game?
Well, there's no future after that, so it's just like a one-shot PD. The rational move is to defect.
Exactly. But if both players know that defection is guaranteed in the last round, what about the second to last round? Game 999,999.
Since we know next round is going to be defect anyway, there's no future cooperation to preserve, so I guess we should defect in the second to last round too.
Precisely. And if you know that, what about the third to last round?
Oh, I see where this is going. The logic rolls all the way back. Defect. Right back to the very first game. Knowing the end date destroys the incentive to cooperate from the start.
It's a fascinating, if slightly depressing, result of pure logic.
Okay, so sustained cooperation is only possible if we don't know when the game ends, if it's an indefinitely repeated game.
That's the crucial difference. When the interaction potentially goes on forever, or at least the end isn't clearly in sight, then backward induction doesn't work the same way. The shadow of the future becomes long enough to matter. This allows for strategic plans that condition future behavior on past choices. Specifically, it allows for the use of threats.
Threats, like cooperate or else.
Essentially, yes. One very famous and effective strategy is called the Grim Trigger strategy.
Grim Trigger. Sounds ominous.
It's quite simple, but powerful. It has 2 rules. Rule 1, start by cooperating and continue to cooperate as long as the other player has always cooperated in the past.
Okay, cooperate if they cooperate. Seems fair.
Rule 2, if either player, you or them, ever defects, even just once, then you will defect forever in all future rounds. That's the grim part. The punishment is permanent.
Wow, that's harsh. One mistake and it's over.
It is harsh, but think about the logic. If your rival knows you're using this strategy, they face a choice. They could defect now and get a quick, one-time gain. But the cost is losing out on all the future profits from cooperation, because they know you'll punish them by defecting forever after.
So the short-term temptation to cheat gets weighed against potentially huge long-term losses.
Exactly. And if the future relationship is valuable enough, if those future cooperation profits are large enough, then the threat of the Grim Trigger makes cooperating the rational choice. It makes cooperate a Nash equilibrium in the repeated game.
But does the threat actually work? What if it's just a bluff?
Ah, fantastic point. This brings us back to credibility. The threat of punishment only works if it's credible. Meaning, if the other player does defect, it must actually be in your own best interest to follow through the punishment, defecting forever. If carrying out the punishment hurts you almost as much as it hurts them, maybe you wouldn't actually do it, and the threat isn't credible.
So the threat needs teeth.
It needs teeth. The power of the Grim Trigger and similar strategies is that under the right conditions, the punishment is credible, and that threat is enough to deter cheating and sustain cooperation that would collapse in a one-shot game. Think about firms trying to collude on high prices that's a repeated PD. The Grim Trigger logic helps explain how they might sustain collusion, even though it's illegal and bad for consumers. Hashtag outro. So let's quickly recap what we've covered. We started with game theory as the science of strategic interaction based on interdependence. We laid out the 4 steps for analyzing any game. Map outcomes, consider what-ifs, find your best response, and crucially, anticipate others' responses.
Right, the payoff tables and check marks.
Then we saw the prisoner's dilemma, the classic example of how individual rationality can lead to collective failure, the failure of cooperation.
That defect-Nash equilibrium that isn't actually the best for the group.
We explored coordination games, where the challenge is choosing among multiple good equilibria, and anti-coordination games, where we want to do different things. We talked about solutions like communication, focal points, and laws.
And how even coordination can trap us in bad outcomes, like bank runs.
We look at sequential games, using game trees and the power of look forward, reason backward induction, and saw how first mover and second mover advantages depend on commitment versus flexibility.
Right.
And finally, we saw how repeating games, especially indefinitely, changes everything. Strategies like the Grim Trigger, based on credible threats and reputation, can actually sustain cooperation, by overcoming the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay. So, what does this all mean? For me, it feels like the big takeaway is that thinking strategically isn't just about my own goals. It's maybe even more about rigorously, logically figuring out how other rational people are likely to act and then planning my move. It feels as you've given us a kind of X-ray of vision to see the underlying structure in almost any interaction.
That's a great way to put it, seeing the underlying game. And maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We talked about how bad equilibria, like bank runs or even economic recessions, can sometimes be self-fulfilling prophecies. They happen partly because everyone expects them to happen, and those expectations drive individual actions like cutting spending or pulling investments that actually cause the feared outcome.
So belief becomes reality.
In a sense, yes. Collective expectation can lock us into a bad state. So take a moment sometime this week. Think about the strategic interactions in your own world, at work, in your community, maybe even in your family or friendships. Ask yourself, are any of these situations potentially trapping us in a bad equilibrium, simply because of shared, maybe negative expectations? And is there a way to change that collective belief, to coordinate on a better